So like all of my comparisons, I like starting with very high dynamic range situations. And here I'm standing in a shadow, but there's really bright parts in the background. Now all these phones do a great job at exposing both the highlights and shadows, but this one right here though has an overall darker image. So the background is exposed much better than the other two, but this doesn't translate too well to the darker parts of the image. So which one's your favorite? Okay, let's bring up those names. So yeah, the Pixel has an HDR Plus mode that's extremely aggressive, which looks good sometimes, and sometimes not so much. Here seems a little harsh. The Galaxy S7 looks great. It's a little warmer than the V20s, but also a little darker. The V20 I think does the best job at balancing the shot in terms of keeping the subject and background exposed well. And it also has a much cooler color temperature than the others. And just for fun, this is what the V20's wide angle looks like. And yeah, you can't really get the full effect in a split screen like this, so let's go into full screen. So here's another shot that tests how well the HDR modes are on the phones, and what probably sticks out to you first is this middle picture. Not only is it a little darker than the others, but there's a really blue tint over the image. Now in terms of which picture is the most well balanced in exposure, I think this one does the best job, because if we zoom in you can also see more details. It's just a little sharper overall, and that one is a Pixel. Its HDR Plus mode does a much better job here than last time. So yeah, the themes of these phones in daylight is that the Pixel's HDR Plus mode is crazy aggressive, sometimes being a great thing, but sometimes it can hurt the image, and the V20 does lean towards a cooler side, which sometimes can hurt it a lot too. And the Galaxy S7 actually looks the most natural here, but I really love the Pixel here though, with its great dynamic range capabilities, even if it leans a little more towards a less realistic look. Okay, so here, first things I can see is that this one is the most colorful, and this one is the least colorful. But what this one does have going for it is how it's the only one that was able to capture the details and colors outside of the window. And it does this without darkening the subject either. It has a very aggressive HDR, and yep, that is because it's the HDR Plus found on the Pixel. The Pixel actually leans more towards a cooler side this time in terms of temperature though. But in the comments below, let me know which one you guys think did the better job. And here, right off the bat, you'll notice the main differences we've been seeing. You can probably guess which ones are which, but this one exposes the bright areas better at the expense of making the shadows a little darker than the others, and the other two look almost identical, but if you take a look at the building in the back, you'll see the middle picture's colors are a little bit cooler. And yes, the V20 is the cooler one, and the Pixel is a darker one with the more vibrant colors. With this one, we can easily guess which one the Pixel is. Of course, it's the darker one. It really likes to prioritize the highlights within the clouds, which I don't think is very necessary. Oh, and by the way, yes, the clouds look different in all these pictures. From left to right is the order I took them in, and this was an extremely windy day, which is why that cloud was moving so fast. But once again, which one is your favorite? The S7 and V20 look very nice, and I think they look a tad better thanks to their brighter pictures. But the one on the right is the brightest, and that is the LG V20. I think the V20's HDR mode is a little bit more aggressive than the S7's, so shadows are a little brighter and highlights are a little darker. There's a big difference in detail though. If we zoom in, the S7 kind of struggles bringing out the details in the statue, while the LG V20 does the best with its 16 megapixels, capturing that detail naturally. But the Pixel doesn't do too bad of a job either with its post-processing sharpening. Oh, and let's not forget to take a look at the V20's wide-angle lens. It is a main selling point with the V20, so it's definitely worth seeing what type of shot you could get compared to the Pixel and S7. Moving into low light, all three do a really good job here, but we have to remember the Pixel doesn't have optical image stabilization, so its shots are usually not as clear as the others. So if we zoom in, do you think you can figure out which one the Pixel is? Yeah, it's this one right here. But still, from far away, it doesn't look too bad. Colors are nice. It's got the most contrast compared to the others, which isn't necessarily good or bad. And we got a lot of J.J. Abrams going on. As for the other two, this one appears much warmer, and the other one is a little cooler, but has kind of purplish hues going on in its darker areas. That's the LG V20, and you'll notice that purple hue in the rest of these shots. But let's zoom in again. The S7 does a better job at exposing the highlights properly, but in terms of sharpness, the V20 does a little better than the S7. Okay, with this one, you'll notice much more vibrant colors here and nice contrast, and I do think this one would definitely be my favorite one if it wasn't for those crazy lens flares. And yes, I wiped all three camera lenses before taking this shot. There's not too many differences between the other two, but we can see that faint purple hue coming through on this one towards the darker areas. But if we zoom in, the photo with the purple hue is actually by far the sharpest. So yes, that one is obviously the V20. It's hard to say which one's the best here. It's definitely going to come down to preference. And when it comes to low light, these shots right here really exaggerate the three phones' strengths and weaknesses. So much so that by now, it's very obvious which is which. The one with the purple hue is the LG V20, the one with the most colors and contrast is the Pixel, and the other is the Galaxy S7. Same exact thing when it comes to this shot of Buzz and Woody. I'm not really sure why the V20's low light photos begin to turn purple, but it does always have one thing going for it, and that's its sharpness. You can really see that when reading Buzz Lightyear's name tag. And while we're here, you can see how much more noisy the S7's shot is. Outdoor selfies look really great in all of them, but there's two things to look for here though: picture quality and angle of the lens. So these two actually look really similar in terms of angle of the lens. You get a lot in the shot, which is perfect for showing where you are or getting your friends in the shot. In terms of quality, this one is overall much darker, but because of this, we get much more colors and details in the background, like on the leaves here and the blue of the sky. As for detail, the darker image is definitely the winner. You can make out every individual eyelash I have, and even the textures on my skin. This one here does the worst with this very soft image, but hey, sometimes a soft image is exactly what you want for hiding imperfections. The colors here are also pretty dull compared to the others. Okay, so make sure you pick a favorite, and let's bring in the logos. Okay, so going back to the angle of the lens for a second, the Galaxy S7 and the V20 are the winners here, but the LG V20 is actually being a little deceiving because what we're seeing here is a cropped image on the V20. By default, it's like this, but in the camera interface, you can essentially zoom out to get a picture with the entire sensor, and now we have an image from the exact same sensor, exact same quality, but a much wider lens. In low light, selfies have the same qualities as outdoor selfies, but just more obvious. The Pixel captures the most detail, although it's a bit darker and has more contrast. There's also a big color shift, creating a cooler image compared to the other two. The LG V20 is the widest when using the sensor's full uncropped image, and the Galaxy S7 is the least sharp, and we can zoom in to get a better idea. It's crazy how much more detail the Pixel captures than the other two. So for video, there's two things to look for: how steady the clips are, and of course, the quality. The Pixel is the only one that doesn't have optical image stabilization, so you would think that's the one that would be the most shaky. And now for quality, the one in the middle has a vastly different color temperature. It's much cooler. The one on the right has much more contrast, which I think kind of hurts the image. You're losing lots of details in the trees right now. And what's crazy is that the Pixel, even without its optical image stabilization, is actually the smoothest thanks to its electronic stabilization. But it's not perfect though. It does get a little choppy sometimes as it tries to lock onto subjects, and the V20 seems to be a little more bumpy than the S7, even with its optical and electronic stabilization turned on. The V20's colors though are really different, and sometimes I think are much more preferable, but sometimes maybe a bit too unrealistic. But once again, it's all going to come down to preference. Well, that is it for this camera comparison. I'm curious to know what you guys think, so in the comments, let me know which phone did the overall better job. And if you're wondering where the iPhone 7 Plus is in all this and how it did against the V20, I did a camera comparison against it, so make sure you go check that out. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you later.